Mr. Kine. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, John Hybush, for those overly generous words and for the warm welcome. And to Governor Wilson, Congressman Gallagher, so many distinguished and honored guests. It is a great honor for us to be here today, in person, at the Reagan Presidential Library. Now, John and I have known each other for a little bit, and I'm a bit of a fan of his. I appreciated that introduction, John, but I think you know the one I prefer is a little bit shorter. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order, and it is my great honor to be with all of you here today. Thank you. It really is an honor for Karen and I to be here again, to return to the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, in the shadow of the final resting place of the 40th President of the United States, to speak about the future of the Republican Party and the conservative movement. And I thank you for the invitation. I think it is altogether fitting to speak about the future of the grand old party here, because we are come to another time for choosing. And I know in my heart of hearts that just as we did in 1980, just as we did in 2016, the American people will again choose a future of freedom and American values, and the Republican Party will lead the way. As John mentioned, it's a special honor to speak to you here. After all, I became a Republican because of Ronald Reagan. As has already been mentioned, I began my life in politics in the Democratic Party. I was the youth Democrat coordinator in Bartholomew County, Indiana. Kind of a community organizer, if the truth be told. But I have to tell you, when I heard the voice and the vision and the ideals and the optimism of Ronald Reagan, I knew my future was in the Republican Party. President Reagan was truly one of a kind, from the Midwest. And while he's nearly universally acclaimed today, I'm old enough to remember that wasn't always the case. Before he was the great communicator, Ronald Reagan was the great disruptor, a conservative outsider who was vigorously opposed by a moderate establishment in his own party, and a national media arrayed against him every day for 8 years. Reagan's victory in 1980 breathed new life into conservatism, and it set a new course for our nation. And afterward, there was no turning back. Today, I think we find ourselves in a very similar position. President Donald Trump is also one of a kind. He too disrupted the status quo. He challenged the establishment. He invigorated our movement, and he set a bold new course for America in the 21st century. And now, as then, there is no going back. Over the past 4 years, the conservative movement has been energized unlike anything we've seen since those heady days of the early 1980s. Now, you wouldn't know it if you turned on CNN. But let me say, to paraphrase Mark Twain, the reports of the Republican Party's death have been greatly exaggerated. I believe the future of our party and our movement is bright. In fact, I never felt better in my life. Puts me to mind of a story that President Reagan used to like to tell. Apparently there was this farmer who decided to take his cow to market, so he loaded the cow in the truck and the dog and headed into town. But on his way there was a traffic accident, and the cow and the truck went in one ditch, and the farmer and the dog went in the other. And as these things go, after he recovered, they ended up in court. And the attorney for the other driver was questioning the farmer in the witness stand. And he said, "Sir, isn't it true that a police officer approached you at the scene and asked how you felt?" And he said, "Yes, sir, I think that's true." And he said, "And isn't it true that you said you never felt better in your life?" And he said, "Yeah, I reckon I did." He said, "No further questions." Now, his attorney jumped up real quickly and did what lawyers call redirect for his client. He said, "Sir, would you like to explain the circumstances in which you made that comment?" He said, "Yeah, I reckon I would." He said, "See, I was driving down the road," and he said, "got in this accident, and when I woke up, me and the cow was in one ditch, and the truck and the dog was in the other, and I seen the sheriff. And he walked over, he looked down at that dog, it had a broke back, it wasn't going to get better. And he got his revolver out and put it next to the dog's ear, and he shot him, put him down. And then he walked over and he looked down at that cow, which is in just as bad a shape. And again, he mercifully put his revolver to the forehead of that cow and pulled the trigger. And then that sheriff walked over to me and said, "And how are you feeling?" And I said, "I never felt better in my life." And it's true. I am optimistic. Here at the Reagan Presidential Library, after 4 years at our president's side, 4 years of relentless attacks by the political opposition and the national media. But I repeat myself. After a year of a heartbreaking pandemic impacted all of our lives, you still look at those 4 years and recognize that under President Trump's leadership, we were able to achieve things Republicans have been talking about since the days of Barry Goldwater. It's true. I mean, President Trump taught us what Republicans can accomplish when leaders stand firm on conservative principles and don't back down. And that's exactly what we did every day of the Trump-Pence administration. We stood firm and did not back down. I like to say it was 4 years of consequence, 4 years of results, 4 years of promises made and promises kept. But think about it. In 48 months, our administration achieved the lowest unemployment, the highest household incomes, the most energy production, the most pro-American trade deals, and the most secure border and strongest military in the history of the world.